Welcome to the Connect to Marriage podcast by Focus on the Family Singapore. While there are no perfect marriages, there is always room for us to grow to be the best spouse we can be.
Hello and welcome to the Connect to Marriage podcast. I'm Jo and I'm your host for this episode. In each episode of the Connect to podcast, we'll be tackling questions that couples ask about sex and intimacy, communication, conflict, and much, much more, anything to do with marriage. We hope you'll keep tuning in to learn with us as you grow closer, deeper, and stronger in your marriage. Now, last episode, we talked about why doesn't my spouse get it? Today, we will follow up on how to deal with differences in marriage. And again, we have with us today Gina and Nelson, and I'm going to just get them to quickly introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, I'm Nelson.
And I'm Gina.
We've been married for 13 and a half years.
And we currently have 3 children here on earth with us. They are 9, 7, and 6.
Ooh.
Yep.
Currently. Are you expecting more?
No.
Well, the last episode we did talk to Nelson and Gina about our differences in communication styles, be it because of our upbringing, our family of origin, or just the fact that it's men and women trying to get onto the same page. And today we want to actually delve into how do we really manage conflict when there is disagreement, when emotions run high. How do we deal with tension under one roof? And I do know that as you shared with us last episode, both of you do have differences, especially when it comes to our definition of punctuality. Maybe let's jump straight in. I don't know, share with us how you dealt with a recent conflict or difference that became a big disagreement.
Well, there are a number of ways that Gina and myself were very different, especially in the way we do things around the house. For example, simple thing like doing the laundry, how we hang the clothes on the rack, or doing the dishes and how we dry the dishes. I've got my own method, and in my thinking, that's the best way to do it. Of course, she's got her own way. And so I've got to learn that just because this is something that I've always done, it might not necessarily be the best or only way.
Okay, so who wins? Whose way wins?
Whoever's doing the laundry then, you do it your way.
Yes. That's a good one. I think that's how my husband does it. So I just make him do it all the time.
Yeah, I think it helps that whenever we have such situations, we constantly remind ourselves that we are on the same team. Just because she's different, just because she doesn't see things or she doesn't do the things the same way that I do them, that she's against me. Oftentimes, when there's an issue, naturally the couples will see that the other person is the issue. That I need to fix that person so that the conflict can be resolved. But what we have learned is that instead of viewing conflicts and issues that way, we try to picture ourselves sitting on the same sofa. So we're sitting side by side and the conflict is in front of us. And we are working as a team, trying to resolve the conflict rather than trying to resolve each other.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously you don't want to fight on the sofa when it's the same sofa. It's like being the same board, right?
Yes.
If one goes down, so does the other. So yeah, that's actually a really good analogy to bring our focus to the right perspective when it comes to dealing with disagreements and conflicts. Are there some practical tips that you guys adopt whenever it comes to managing conflict in your relationship?
So usually the first thing we try to do is to listen to each other. And by listening, it means we don't interrupt or we don't try to finish up the other person's sentence when he or she is still trying to explain their thoughts or their perspectives. We try to give each other the respect and the space to share how each feels about the issue.
And one thing that Gina is very good at doing is trying to understand things from my perspective. For those who tuned in the previous episode, you might recall us saying that this phrase, help me to understand how you think. So oftentimes she will be the one that will verbalize to me, help me to understand why did you do it that way, or why did you do that, or why did you say that. Now, when you hear it for the first time, it can be a bit intimidating. But I find that when she verbalizes that, it actually helps me to really think through my own processes. What was I thinking when I did those things? What was I thinking when I said those words?
And I also try to reassure him and to affirm him that I'm for him, not against him, that I still love him and am still committed to him, so that he is reminded that, when we talk about differences or issues or whatever conflicts that may come up, it's not because I'm against him. It's not because I want out of this relationship, but it's because I want this relationship to work. I want this relationship to be strong. That's why I need to talk about it. So I try to reassure him and affirm him even before I bring up the issues.
It sounds like actually many of the tips that you gave us the last episode in regards to how to have effective communication between husband and wife applies also in a conflict situation.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Yeah, so it's almost like if we get into the habit, like using the phrase, help me to understand you, even in a situation of conflict, that works as well. And I can just imagine, right? Usually we'll say like, why did you do that? Versus help me to understand why you did that.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like I'm trying to understand you, I'm not trying to accuse you. I just want to understand.
Yeah,
even if I do
right.
not agree with you, but if I can understand where you're coming from, it helps me to be more accommodating towards it.
It's true. And I think this is where I can just hear my husband's niggling voice saying that, and the tone in which you say it.
Yes,
Yes,
that's
very
right. That is
true.
very true, yes. Yeah, so it's not just about the words that we use, but it's also the tone of how we say it. And it also includes our body language, the non-verbal communication, as what the experts will call it. How do we look at our spouse? How do we
Stand.
Yeah, stand, or yeah.
Are we holding a knife when we're saying it or not?
Okay, so it sounds like we really need some practice. I don't know, maybe in front of a mirror. Even practice saying it in a nice tone. I've realized actually for myself, I can even say it like, help me to understand you, and put on a smile, and yet it sounds like I am actually not so happy with you. Okay, so
There is another practical tool that we have found really helpful for us whenever we communicate with each other, whenever we have an issue, is this thing called when you, I feel. So this tool helps us to focus on the action, like when you something, and not on the person. So it puts the blame on the action, and from there we share how this particular action has resulted in certain emotions within us. So that's why the I feel part. So it provides the platform for suggestions on how the person can do things differently so that the same emotions will not be triggered. The key words are basically when you, fill in the blanks, I feel in the blanks, because, fill in the blanks, so please, blah, 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 fill in the blanks.
okay, I think we really need practice here.
Yeah. Okay, so just to help you guys along, we've got this little example to share with you, but to give you some background regarding this particular issue.
A lifetime of love and romance requires intentional effort and attention. Yet, in times of busyness and with overwhelming priorities to tend to, our marriages can often take a back seat. No matter the state of your relationship today, we want to help you and your spouse thrive. Check out Connect 2, featuring specially curated experiences and resources, our favorite selection of articles, top hits on our podcast, date ideas, conversation starters, and more to address the issues that are keeping you and your spouse apart and help you rekindle the joy of pursuing one another. Visit www.family.org.sg/connect2 today.
Now, Gina likes to sweep our bedroom floor at night before bedtime. Now, because she likes to have a clean floor when she wakes up in the morning. Okay. After sweeping, she used to have this habit of leaving the broom and the dustpan in the walkway that's outside the bedrooms. Now, early in the morning, I'm the one that wakes up early to settle the kids when it's still dark. And there have been many times when I will walk out into the walkway and kick the dustpan and the broom because I didn't know they were there. So using this tool...
But if she does that so often, surely you must
Yeah, but sometimes it's early in the morning and you would not think of that, you see. And
When he's still so sleepy.
yeah, and you realize You only realize it's there when you kick it and you're like, ouch, they're there.
But you had
Again.
13 years of practice. Okay, never mind. Anyway, so what do we do here?
Okay, so using this tool called When You, I Feel, it helps me to verbalize the issue to her. So for example, I will go up to her and say, okay, darling.
After he has calmed down.
After I've calmed down,
Okay,
maybe
that's
later in
key.
the day, and I'll say, I've got something that I want to talk to you about. And I'll say, when you leave the broom and the dustpan in the walkway, now I feel irritated and angry. So that's the action and the emotions. And I'll go on to, because in the morning when I wake, the hallway is still dark, I can't see anything, and I would kick them. And when they fall, they might wake the children up before they have to wake up. So please, in future, after using them, please either leave them in our bedroom or put them back into the kitchen, not in a walkway.
So this tool makes the whole situation very clear and factual for me without putting any blame on me.
It's a very comprehensive communication.
And yet it allows me to see the implications of my actions, which I totally had no intention to irritate Nelson or
It's
to
true.
anger him early in the morning, right? Because I'm still sleeping. So I had no idea what he was going through until he mentioned this to me, and immediately I could just adjust my actions and that issue was resolved just like that.
Yeah, I think because naturally most couples, when they have an issue, you've probably heard this, don't use the words you always and you never.
Yeah.
So it'll be very easy for me to, you always leave the broom and the dustpan in the walkway, but that's not really true. It's not always. So using this tool, that When You, I Feel, it helps us not to accuse, but to really state, okay, this is the action we're talking about, not you. And this action has caused me to feel this way. So on my part, I would like to see this alternatives here.
So basically depersonalizing the
Yes,
issue. Kind of like
correct.
how we do parenting, right? We want to focus on the
Yes,
behavior that we're trying
not
to
the child.
Okay, so we are actually correcting our spouse's behavior without them realizing it.
Or at least letting them know the implications of their behavior
Yeah.
so they can choose to do something about it.
Okay, this is really helpful. I think all the married couples out there, we do need to practice this. Now, in each podcast, we do address a frequently asked question that couples have about marriage. And let me go to today's question. So today's question is, I don't enjoy meeting my in-laws regularly, but my wife is so close to her parents. Whenever I am with them, I feel stifled and bulldozed over everything as they have an opinion on every single thing. How do I cope without arguing about this every single time?
I think with every communication, it's important to talk and to listen to each other. So I think it's important for this person to share his or her concerns and whatever misgivings the person might have honestly with the spouse and look at it together. Again, we would say practice that couch thing, you're sitting together looking at this issue. So it's not about each other, but it's about this issue. Hear each other out and also listen to the spouse. Maybe the spouse feels the same about his or her parents. I don't know. Yeah, but you never know because you're assuming a lot of things here as well. So it's always good to share, but also give space for your spouse to share his or her point of view as well.
Yeah. I think it's good to acknowledge that the fact that your spouse is close to your parents, I mean, it is in itself a strength. That is very good. But also share what are your concerns and how you're not comfortable. Not just because they are close, but about how that closeness brings about certain things that would affect your marriage. So, for example, you can say things like, my concern is that your parents seem to want to run our lives too much. I hope this is something that we can work on and change. Remember, the key thing is talk to be understood and listen so that you can understand.
Communication, right, just goes back
Yes,
really to,
yes.
to good
Communication is
communication.
really the key.
Okay, before we issue our couple challenge for the day, Nelson and Gina, can we get you to, give us any last thoughts that you have regards to this whole area of communication and conflict?
I think I would like to say to all married couples out there that remember when you're in a marriage for a lifetime, you are always on the same team. The enemy here is the issue, not your spouse. No matter what differences you face, deal with it together.
Yeah, remember, our differences are actually often the very things that attracted us to each other in the first place. And in the midst of the conflicts, in the midst of the irritation, sometimes we might need to step back and learn to view or appreciate these differences in a different light. In fact, conflicts and the ability to resolve conflicts in a healthy way would actually strengthen your relationship because you learn to communicate with each other, you learn to understand each other even more than before.
Thank you. You know, those are just great tips, and I can just picture your household and how, despite having 3 kids, it sounds like a really peaceful household. And definitely, I think for married couples who have children, especially young children in their house, it's really great that if as husband and wife, we can demonstrate what effective, healthy communication looks like. And even when we have differences, how we can healthily resolve and talk through those differences. It really models for our children that we don't always have to be always thinking the same, liking the same things, having the same preferences, but yet we can get along really well. And we can, of course, learn to deepen our love and appreciation for one another in the family. So thank you so much for joining us over 2 episodes and sharing such really practical nuggets and tips for us to improve our relationship as husband and wife. And today's couple challenge, if you're listening to this with your spouse, even if you're not listening to this with your spouse, you can do this alone actually, and that's to take on the tip that Nelson and Gina have left us with, a little bit of a language exercise here that we're going to do today. Take an extra 5 minutes at the end of this episode to complete the sentences. Okay, and first we start with when you...
I feel. Because. So please.
And to do it all with a smile.
Yes. The tone of voice.
Tone of voice and body language. So 5 minutes right now. We will encourage you, go stand in front of the mirror and try this out. Okay, well, you can find out more marriage content and marriage tips by visiting our website at family.org.sg/connect2. And if you've not already done so, do subscribe to our Connect 2 podcast for more of such practical tips as you've heard today, and do share it with another married friend. We want to thank you for tuning in. We hope you've enjoyed the time with us as much as we enjoyed the time with Nelson and Gina. So take care of yourself and of course of each other as husband and wife.